Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be our third webinar out of four for our small ruminant series that we've been doing this spring, kind of focusing on parasitology. And today we have Dr. Rios from Mississippi State coming to give us a presentation about some sustainable parasite control in small ruminants. And so we kind of talked 2 weeks ago with Dr. Lemus about some biological control, and Dr. Rios today is going to talk a little bit more about the chemical control and some sustainable practices that you can implement on your operation. And so I will let her take it away. Dr. Rios.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm so pleased to be here sharing with you all, talking about sustainable parasite control in small ruminants. My position here in Mississippi State is 60 extension and 40 research. And I have been almost 5 years in Mississippi State as a small ruminant specialist, and I'm very pleased to now be in touch with the Louisiana people through our alumni, and glad to be here. So let's get started. And okay, so the basics of parasite control needs to start in the life cycle. Life cycle of the gastrointestinal nematodes, thinking always that the most important one is barber pole worm or Haemonchus contortus, causing a very aggressive and severe pathogenicity and problems and losses in the small ruminant business. This nematode, barber pole worm, has a direct life cycle. In red, we see the parts that are happening inside the animal or the host. And in green, we see the parts of the life cycle that are happening outside the host, so in the environment. So here in red, we see the adult larvae that are inside the abomasum of the animal, and they are reproductive nematodes, adult nematodes that are there producing lots, thousands of eggs daily. These eggs go outside the animal in the feces of the animal to the environment. And once the conditions are favorable for these eggs and these nematodes, they hatch. They hatch inside the fecal pellet of sheep and goat. Barber pole worm is a common nematode for both species, so it affects both sheep and goats, and the treatment is similar for both. So here we have that once the eggs of the nematode eggs hatch inside the fecal pellet, it produces the larvae 1. This larvae 1 grows and molts into larvae 2, and this larvae 2 goes outside the fecal pellet and evolves or molts into larvae 3. This larvae 3 is considered the infective larvae. And this infective larvae goes into the grass and goes to the top of the grass, and it becomes available to more animals to get reinfected. So for young animals that have not developed their immunity, these larvae will be very pathogenic. Once the animal is adult, it will host these adult nematodes, but the immunity will be there in place, and the animal will be also affected, but will be less affected than young animals. So we are talking about some some different nematodes here, where, as I said already, barber pole worm is the most important one. The scientific name, Himoncus contortus. And this barber pole worm is going to be in the abomasum of the animal. Also sharing abomasum with the barber pole, we have another nematode that's less pathogenic, called the La Dorsalia circumcinta, or brown stomach worm. This is less pathogenic, does not feed on blood, and but it's there also similar, producing similar eggs that cannot be distinguished by eye. After this, we have the bankrupt worm. That's a different nematode that's not allowed, is not in the abomasum, but he will be found in the small intestine. This is called bankrupt worm or black score worm, and the scientific name is Trichostrongylus couluriformis. So because these two, brown stomach worm and bankrupt worm, are less pathogenic, the talk will be mainly focusing on barber pole worm. That happens to be the only one from these three nematodes that are the most important ones. This is the only one that feeds on blood. That's why it's called barber pole worm, because you can see the worms, and you can see the white and the red stripes in the worm. That is just in the gut with blood and the reproductive tract of the worm. Okay, so when we talk about sustainable, we are talking about that's a practice that can continue, can be working over a period or a time, and has the possibility to work even for future generations. So that's why we are talking about sustainable practices for controlling parasites, because we want this to work for the future generations also. So this concept of being sustainable goes through two different concepts also that we will be explained in this talk. One is refugia. We will learn what's refugia, and also targeted selective treatment. And also the fact that we will need integrated parasite control or different tools to make this work in a sustainable way. Okay, so if we go back on the life cycle, and we see that something is happening inside the animal in red and outside the animal or host in green, we will see which are the practices we need to cover in order to control the parasites inside the host. Okay, so for example, selection and cooling animals is something important. We shouldn't be keeping animals in our herd that are less productive or less resistant to parasites. We should be, said in different words, we should be choosing animals from resistant breeds, so we make our life easier when we, as a farmer, we choose the correct breed, the breed that's more resistant to parasites. We actually should be also deworming these animals based on TST or targeted selective treatment. So we shouldn't be deworming all animals. We should deworm only those animals that needs to be dewormed. In this way, we keep refugia, and we don't increase the possibilities of the parasites getting resistant to the dewormers. Strategic supplementation of the herd is a practice also we can do on our animals to make them stronger and to have higher immunity against parasites. So adequate nutrition of the animals, it's important to boost their immunity and to resist not only to worms, but to different diseases. Also, alternative treatments are treatments that we can apply on the animals that are not specifically dewormers and that can help us to control parasites, such as copper particles, bioactive forages, and others. So when we want to sustainably control parasites outside the host, that we saw in the life cycle, what was happening outside the host in the environment, we can take also some measures or tools or apply some practices that can help us. For example, adequate periods of rotation and rest of the paddocks is recommended to rotate in very intensive systems, each 3 to 5 days, but we understand not everyone has that many paddocks to make these very short rotations, but we need to rotate as much as possible our animals and not wait until they have eaten all the grass, because that puts them in a higher risk to get those L3 or infective larvae. So grazing young animals with low immunity in grasslands or in paddocks that are as clean as possible. We understand that there's not such thing as a clean paddock, but the animals that are weak, that have low immunity, if we can keep them in the paddocks that have rested at least 20, 30 or more days, that will be ideal. Not put the young animals after the adult ones, because then they get more in risk to be infected. Avoid overgrazing. It's like a rule that we shouldn't be grazing our grasses under 4 inches. Okay? Adjust stocking density, because the more animals we have grazing together, the quicker they use all the biomass available, and the quicker we should be changing them from a paddock to other. Use of bioactive forages. These are just plants that contain secondary metabolites. Most of these are legumes, like clover, like plants that are high in tannins, that can help in a natural way to control parasites. The one most studied here in the US is Sericea lespedeza. The use of multi-species paddock is something that's recommended a lot, especially for goats that are browsers. We know that the behavior of eating in the paddock is different from sheep to goats. So for example, sheep are more grazing animals and goats are more browsing animals. So if we are allowing these animals to have different plants available in the paddocks, not only 100% grasses, that will allow them to choose those plants that are higher in tannins and in a natural way to control the parasites. Actually, also, it's important that if the larvae 3 are going to the top of the plants, we should always keep in mind that they are not going to go too high in the plant. So the higher the plants the animals are eating, they should have less L3s available to get infected. Co-grazing is something important also. So for example, it's used a lot to graze cows with sheep. In this way, they can help each other. The species can help each other because they don't share the same barber pole worm. They share a different species. So if you send the sheep first and then the cows will eat lower than the sheep and will vacuum the L3s that come available without getting pathogenicity or signs of parasitism, as if we send after the adult animals, we send the young animals of the same species. So controlling outside the host, there's a natural control that's also available in some other countries called biowarma, and this is a nematophagous fungi. It's just a trapping nematode fungi. It's a fungi that's taken from the soil, and it's available to be in the feed of our animals, and it will go through the digestive system, resist digestion, go outside in the fecal pellet, and once it's in the fecal pellet, it traps the larvae that hatches from the eggs. So it's a biocontrol. It's a natural control that's available to be fed to our animals. Okay, so when we are talking about targeted selective treatment, is just deworming those animals that requires to be dewormed, not deworming as we did in the past. We did blanket deworming. That's no longer a recommendation because blanket deworming can cause higher resistance from the parasites to the dewormer. So we want to avoid blanket deworming. So we need to choose very carefully which animal we are going to deworm. And for this, we need to go through some indicators to learn when it's the correct moment and time for deworming a specific animal. We are not blanket deworming as we did in the past. And this will help us to keep refugia, and refugia is that population of parasites that are not exposed to an anthelmintic or a dewormer, and that keeps us with a population of susceptible worms that are available in the herd and are available in the farm that can be controlled with specific dewormers. Okay. When we want to check an animal for if he needs to be dewormed or not, we can use 5-point check. 5-point check starts for a barber pole worm, at least starts with the eye or anemia. So that's the use of FAMACHA. We will explain what's FAMACHA right now. So if the animal has anemia, it's an indicator that needs to be dewormed, but also you can combine the eye or anemia with the body condition of the animal. So if the animal has low body condition, you can also use this indicator as a way of saying, okay, this animal definitely needs to be dewormed. So the animal has low body condition and has anemia, or has anemia and has diarrhea. So tail soiling on the tail of the animal is an indicator that the animal needs to be dewormed. So we normally use 1-2 indicators at least to check on the possibility of deworming the animal. And a fourth one that's important for barber pole worm is the swelling of the jaw. That's called bottleneck. And it's an indicator also that the animal needs to be dewormed. So the nose, the discharge in the nose is for a different parasite. Is not for barber pole worm. That's why we don't normally use that indicator. We use it more for lungworms or for some worms like Oestrusovus that goes inside the nose of the animal. But for barber pole worm, we can start looking at the anemia chart or FAMACHA in the eye, the body condition, the diarrhea or not diarrhea, and the bottle jaw also. So this 5-point check was developed also by the team of researchers that developed the FAMACHA. So scored cards for the 5-point check will be FAMACHA card for the eye. This is the parasite that I was mentioning that's nothing to do with barber pole worm. So we will jump the nose. We will go to the tail of the animal and the soil, the DAX score that indicates when an animal has lots of diarrhea and needs to be dewormed. We also can look into the body condition that goes from 1 to 5, being 1, an animal that has very little muscles and very thin animal. And we have an animal here that's has lots of muscle and fat deposition, and it's an animal in good conditions, has a 5. And the bottle jaw that I was talking about as an indicator of barber pole worm. Okay, so body condition, as I said, it's something you have to touch the animal, not only see the animal, but touch the animal. So you can touch the spine, touch it if it has fat cover or not, and how big are the muscles that goes along the spine. And if the animal is less than 3, like 2 or 1.5, is an animal that's very thin and has lost body condition and is a good candidate to be dewormed. So we don't, as I said already, we don't use just one indicator. We try to use more than one indicator. Okay, and the average body condition you should be looking at is condition 3. Okay. So here we have a very old animal in the farm that has bristly hair, has very poor body condition. If you touch this animal here in the spine, you can touch the ribs, you can touch the spine and the hips, the bones of the hips are there. No, not muscle coverage, no fat coverage. So these are animals that if this animal, apart from this body condition, has a poor FAMACHA, this is a great candidate to be dewormed. Okay. Here we see the submandibular edema or bottle jaw. That's also a good indicator of needing to be dewormed. Here's just for you to see how with your eyes you can see the barber pole worm inside the abomasum of a goat, and whatever big worms you see here that are red and white will be females of barber pole worm, and the smaller ones that are just red will be the males. Okay, this was a little video that showed That's a Haemonchus contortus, suborbital worm that's moving taken from the abomasum of the goat. So when we saw already what to do if we want to do a targeted selective treatment. What indicators we should be using. We should be using at least 2 indicators, FAMACHA and body condition, or FAMACHA and the presence of diarrhea or bottle jaw. So those are important indicators that will tell you which animal from all the animals you have needs to be dewormed. We try not to deworm, as I said already, try never deworm all the animals at once, because that will increase the risk of having resistance to these dewormers. So we have 3 families of dewormers: benzimidazole or white dewormers, that are those that have been used a lot, like Safeguard, Valbason. And in each group of dewormers in yellow, I'm trying to highlight the dewormer from that group that still is more effective. Nowadays is more effective. That means that has less resistance from the parasite population. So for benzimidazoles or white dewormers is the albendazole or valbason. From the macrolytic lactones is the moxidectin or cydectin, the most effective one. And when we go to the third group of dewormers, the membrane depolarizing class or nicotinic dewormers, the prohibit, levamisole or prohibit, is the most effective one from that group also. Okay, so the proper drenching procedure should be using this syringe with a metallic tip. All the dewormers available for sheep and goats, most of them are extra label dewormers, so you will need to build a relationship with your vet so he indicates what dewormer you should be using. And because we are not blanket deworming, but we also are not rotating dewormers. In the past was something used that every year the farmer rotated or alternate the dewormer. That's something that's no longer recommended. So no blanket deworming, no rotation of dewormers. You have to use a dewormer that works for your animals and to control those parasites, and stick to that dewormer as long as possible until it stops working. So the proper drenching procedure will be leveling the chin of the animal and dispensing the dewormer behind the tongue of the animal. And all the dewormers available are oral dewormers. So no injectables and no pour-on dewormers for sheep and goats. Okay? When you go to the page wormex.info, wormex.info is the page from the American Consortium for Small Ruminant Parasite Control. They have the most amazing and updated information for you available to use. And you will see there, when you go to dewormers and then to charts, you will see there the charts for the correct doses to be used in goats and in sheep, and for each dewormer available. So valbason, Safeguard, Ivomec, Prohibit, Cydectin, Rumatel, and according to the weight of your animal, the dose you will be using, and the same for the sheep. And normally you would have higher dose for goats, 1.5 higher the dose for goats, but it's not nothing you need to guess. You just need to go to the correct place and find the chart in the page, warmex.info, and then you will find the correct dose depending on the weight of your animal. So this indicates that you need to weigh your animal before you can dose it. Okay? So resistance to these anthelmintics was first studied in the States, starting with the first benzimidazole more than 60 years ago that was studied and was determined as that had resistance from the parasite population. Three years later, in very short time, the first report came from Kentucky on resistance of Haemonchus contortus. And nowadays, it's a worldwide problem. Resistance and cross-resistance is a problem everywhere. That's why we try to talk a lot about sustainable parasite control to farmers. Okay, so the importance of preserving refugia. Refugia means that inside the animal, you will have susceptible parasites and resistant parasites. It's a way of saying, okay, let's say that their susceptible parasites are green and their resistant parasites are red. We have the population and has both of these parasites. This is something that can pass through generations. So resistant parasites will produce resistant parasites and so on. And the same happens with susceptible parasites. So when you deworm all your animals in your farm, what are you doing? You are killing all the susceptible parasites. And when you deworm every year with a different dewormer, you are killing all the susceptible parasites because you're exposing these parasites to different compounds and using different doses and probably not weighing the animals and blanket deworming, and you're ending up having this. No susceptible parasites, just resistant parasites mating and producing eggs of more resistant parasites. And this, when you end up having this in your farm, it's something terrible because no dewormer will work and will efficiently deworm your animals. So you will end up having very high pathogenicity and high burden in those animals and not being able to control it. Instead of that, when you keep animals that are never dewormed because you're using indicators and you're using FAMACHA and you deworm only those animals that needs to be dewormed, you end up having this. You end up having the same good balanced population of susceptible and resistant parasites. And this is what we need to have in our farms. We don't want to end up having this. And if we misuse the dewormers and if we don't weigh our animals and give the incorrect dose and we rotate the dewormers and we blanket deworm, we end up having this. And this is what we don't want. Okay, so we need to target the treatment and give the treatment to those animals that need to be dewormed. And that's why we are training people and we are training farmers and students and vet students and everyone here and abroad to use FAMACHA. It's an anemia guide that was developed by Dr. Fafa Malan, and it's called Fafa Malan chart. FAMACHA comes from Fafa Malan chart, was developed in South Africa for sheep affected by barber pole worm, but also has been validated for goats and for camelids also. So FAMACHA will indicate you that if the lower mucus of the eye is this red, you don't need to deworm. Here's a check mark. If the lower mucus of the eye is this red-pink color, it also has a check mark, doesn't need to be dewormed. So you start deworming if it's 3, 4, or 5. And when it's 3, it has a interrogation mark here. That means that you will have to check some other indicators. For example, your animal has lost weight, your animal has low body condition plus a 3, then you deworm the animal. But if it only has a 3, probably and it looks very healthy and has good body condition, you probably don't need to deworm the 3, okay? But for sure, you need to deworm a 4, here an exclamation mark, and for sure, you will need to deworm a 5, and hopefully not wait until it's a 5 because the animal can die, okay? Probably it's too late. Okay, here the Dr. Fafa Malan in a meeting of the consortium. We were very pleased. We are always very pleased to see him, and it's always an honor to work with him because he developed this tool that has been so useful for retarding the issues of resistance in the worldwide. Okay, so what's FAMACHA? FAMACHA is a scoring technique or an anemia chart that is used for checking the lower mucus of the eye and seeing if it needs or not to be dewormed, the animal. And the steps to do FAMACHA are cover the eye, push a little bit the eyeball of the animal. With the other hand, you pull down the lower eyelid and the lower mucus will pop. This mucus popping will be compared to the anemia chart, and you will decide if the animal needs or not to be dewormed. Okay, here it's showing how to do the technique. And we also offer the certification for getting you certified on FAMACHA, and you also have in Louisiana Dr. Abed that's also a certified instructor for FAMACHA. So you can go to the webpage wormex.info, go to FAMACHA training, go to certified instructors, and you will see there the how to contact your certified FAMACHA instructor in Louisiana, Dr. Christine Navarre. She is from LSU, and you have her details here. When you go to wormex.info, you can contact her if you need to be trained for FAMACHA. Okay, so this is the card. Here are the steps you need to go through. Here, cover, push, pull, and pop. And this QR code drives you through to a video to show you how to do it properly, like this, FAMACHA in a nutshell. Okay. going to start.
Are you finished? Yeah, it looks like your screen quit sharing. I didn't know if you were finished with your slides or whatnot.
Okay, so sorry.
It looks like your slide. Are you still trying to share your screen? Share your screen?
Okay, it's not sharing. Okay.
No, man,
sorry.
it just cut out. It just cut out.
Okay, let me check here. Okay, sorry. Share again. Screen. Now?
There we go. There we go.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. So here, it's one more information for internal parasites for kids that's available in wormex.info and can show you how to explain easily to 4-H families and to kids. And you can feel free to go into the wormex.info and print the information you need for any of your events. So this again is the web page with information on parasite control and sustainable practices. Do not blanket deworm your animals. Use external indicators as body condition score, feed intake, average daily gain, and FAMACHA, and targeted selective treatment. So treat only those animals that needs to be treated. Okay. A little bit on the alternative treatment or use of bioactive forages. It's just that in the past, we normally use anthelmintic drugs or dewormers, and they have generated tons of issues about parasite resistance. So also risk of having these residues in food, and then in the environment also. So that's why some researchers have been going through the idea of alternative control through genetic selection, through vaccines, through biological control, and bioactive forages. As I said before, the one that has been studied the most here in the States is Serratia lespedeza. That is a high tannin plant that can control parasites. Okay, so is there a risk of having anthelmintic residues in the environment? Yes, there are. Even some farmers have noticed that when they have stopped deworming all the animals, they are seeing more insects and dung beetles, and it's more life in the soil and in the paddocks. Okay, so because these dewormers can not only affect parasites but also affect the environment. There's actually a study from countries where the sheep industry is bigger than here in the States. There's studies where they have found benzimida salts in groundwater and surface water already. Okay, so yes, the risk is there. So the use of medicinal plants or ethnoveterinary is also a possibility. Bioactive forages are normally forages that have secondary metabolites, and the most famous of these secondary metabolites are tannins, and that happen to be in our legumes like clover, Serratia lespedeza, okay, and can help. They are environmentally friendly. They can produce less parasite resistance and help to reduce animal loss in the farms, and can be an ally for organic production. Some bioactive forages that are available in the States can be lotus, alfalfa, chicory, clover, and they are normally, you can find some of these growing naturally in your paddock. So the idea will be to stop spraying all plant that is not a grass, because the bigger the diversity, the better for your animals. As those in the top as cool season perennials, and as warm season perennials, the perennial peanut, the Ceresia lespedisa that I was mentioning, the kudzu is also a legume that goats love to eat. It cannot be planted, at least in Mississippi, because it's a noxious weed. But if you have it in the farm, you can control it through the use of goats or sheep. And because of the high tannins, it should be also helping to control parasites. Okay, we have all this information in the webpage of Dr. Rocky Limos that you had him in the webinar, the previous webinar. Okay, something very useful also for controlling parasites is the copper wire particles, COWP. This in combination with bioactive forages. So the consortium has information on the use of Ceresia lespedisa combined with copper bolus, and these copper bolus have helped a lot. Is used a lot by goat farmers to reduce parasites, and it has been studied that to have like an additional improvement on parasite control when it's combined with Ceresia lespedisa. That happens to be not only good for controlling nematodes, but also good for controlling coccidia. The other dewormer alternative to dewormers that I was mentioning was the use of Dudingtonia flagrans or bioworma. It's a trapping nematode fungi, as you see here. The fungi has spores, and these spores germinate in the feces of the animal and traps the larvae when they hatch from the eggs. Okay, so it's a natural control called bioworma. Is the active compound is a fungi called Dudingtonia flagrans. It's a natural fungi that can be found in soil and pasture. It's non-chemical, so it's a biological control of nematodes that germinates in the feces of the animal. Okay. And well, here is my contact information. If you want to reach out or keep in touch with me, I was saying before we started that we will have in June, the 14th of June, a big small ruminant conference in Mississippi, and we will be glad to see you all guys joining. We will have speakers from all over the country, experts in different topics of sheep and goat production. So thank you very much for this invitation, and you can follow our activities in Facebook and Instagram also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rios, for coming on and sharing some information with us. I know that it will be much appreciated when it gets out there, and some of the stakeholders and producers and constituents are able to access that. So like before, give us a little time to transcribe this and put it on the YouTube page. It's going to be under LSU AgCenter -livestock. And then once we complete the webinar in 2 weeks with Dr. Navarre, the extension veterinarian for LSU, I'll compile all of those together and put them on our new website page as well for small ruminants as well. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or Dr. Rios or anything. If you have any other question about any of the previous webinars, feel free to reach out. Dr. Rios, thank you once again, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you for this invitation. Bye.
Yes, ma'am. Have a good one.
Bye.